Let's go! Guys, it's hard to be positive when we get this type of news. Arik Gilbert reportedly homesick and considering leaving, according to 247 Sports and Brooks Capuena of The Advocate. Brody Miller of The Athletic is reporting very similar stuff. So we're going to look at Arik Gilbert's stats. We're going to dive into his usage in the LSU offense. We're going to talk about what I pointed out in our last two film studies about him. So obviously, if you're not a diehard LSU football fan, and if you can't stand honest analysis, and just go ahead and go somewhere else. Okay, let's do that, all right? Because today we're going to be very honest about Ed Orgeron. Because the video I was going to do today was on an ESPN video that a lot of you guys sent me, where Zubin Mehenti, an ESPN radio host, was comparing Ed Orgeron to Gene Chizik. So let's first go to this from TJ Finley, Hebrews 11:1. Now look, Louisiana's, all of us that are from Louisiana, we have not hit our Bibles quite like we have in the past hour or so. This is TJ Finley saying, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. Okay. But this is obviously what a lot of you have sent me is this Arik Gilbert Bible verse. And this is the Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. So, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Hope and a future. So, for those that don't know, Arik Gilbert, I have on good authority, was not at practice today. And that's where we get the word homesick. And he is a little homesick. So, let's first, before we get into Arik Gilbert's role in the offense, before we talk about Ed Orgeron, let's actually discuss how difficult life is for a teenager right now who's in college for the first time. This is not your normal football freshman year. You're basically in your dorm or apartment, and all you basically do is go play football. You can't go anywhere, and you're getting tested more than your classmates, so you can't go to parties, you can't go hang out, you can't really have a social life. And here's the thing that's different about Arik Gilbert and every other player. So most people that go to LSU are lucky to have an LSU offer. Arik Gilbert is not that person. He had an offer legit from every single school. He is the highest rated tight end in the history of football for a reason coming out of high school. He was a Gatorade National Player of the Year. So let's talk about Arik Gilbert's recruitment. He came to LSU because LSU became what LSU became last year. He didn't come to LSU because of his relationship with Ed Orgeron. He didn't come to LSU because of any one coach. He came to LSU because he saw the Joe Burrow offense and said, I want to be in that offense. Because remember, Arik Gilbert was a guy that they stopped in LSU practice to tell Ed Orgeron that they got him. They actually didn't think it was going to happen. A lot of people thought he was going to go to Georgia. But what sold him was getting to play in the LSU offense and getting to play right away. So think about if you're LSU recruiting this guy. Do you think LSU was telling Arik Gilbert, hey, we're going to have you be a lead blocker for half the game? And if you've watched my film studies over the past few weeks, guess what? You know that Arik Gilbert hasn't been split out wide all that much. He was against Missouri, and I pointed out this stat. And even when he was the in man of the line of scrimmage against Missouri, he was able to go out and run routes. But because they haven't had Torrey Carter, they've been asking Arik Gilbert to really be a lead blocker, to essentially be the fullback in the offense. Well, he's not Thaddeus Moss. This is a receiver playing tight end. This is Kyle Pitts. Do you think Florida uses Kyle Pitts as a lead blocker? No, they split him out wide. They find creative ways to get him the football like they did against Missouri. Why haven't they done it since then? And if you have been watching my film studies, you know that I've been saying for weeks now that they're asking Arik Gilbert to block too much. Now, I understand there's some of you that are going to say, well, don't give any one player preferential treatment. And that is a decent point. He should do what is asked of him. Well, number one, he's actually blocked, for the most part, pretty well. But the thing that I have an issue with is that they haven't thrown him the ball the same way that they threw him the ball against Missouri, where we actually got to see him be the freak athlete he actually is. Now, some of that is not having Miles Brennan, but a lot of it is, what the heck are we doing? And once again, we'll get to Arik Gilbert's stats in a moment, but this is a guy who could have gone anywhere, who also knows that any school would drop their current tight end and replace him with Arik Gilbert right now, maybe outside of Florida, or maybe outside of A&M with Jalen Werdermeyer. But even then, they probably would do it. He's that special of a talent, and it shows on the tape. Even on our Alabama film study that was posted earlier today, there was a crazy Arik Gilbert catch that blew me away. Now, let's go to Brooks Capoina again. And he also, basically, this tweet is saying, Arik Gilbert missed practice today. He's told people he's considering leaving, but no official change has been made yet. So, that's basically what I'm hearing too. I spoke to someone in the building. Actually, in our first recording, I had to stop because I did get a pretty incriminating text message about this. From what I've been told, is he is a little frustrated with how things are going, and who wouldn't be? And it is tough, like I said, being a freshman tight end a million miles away. Now, I know it's in Georgia, it's a drivable distance, but it's still 9-10 hours away. And you're losing. You didn't expect things to get this bad. And you just saw your best player on the team say, I'm just going to leave. And this is basically the society we're living in today now. Players know that this year doesn't count against their eligibility, and there's going to be all kinds of lax transfer rules. So, and once again, I'm not tuning my own horn, but I've said this in the past film studies, and I've gotten so many messages from you now, basically saying the same thing. I think Gilbert's frustrated with his role right now. He's not running routes. Like I mentioned last week, and I'm not going to show you the actual film because I don't want to get into that. I've done so much film breakdown. But Arik Gilbert is unstoppable on slant routes. He's legit not been stopped this year on a slant route. So what has LSU done in the last few weeks? Well, the slant routes that they would normally throw to Arik Gilbert, guess what? They're throwing it to Kayshon Boutte, who this year has caught only half of his slant routes. Slants are a very important route in, modern day offense to complete third downs. And there was one slant that Arik Gilbert not only caught, but he broke a tackle and was able to get a few extra yards against Missouri. So when you factor all of that in, I know no one player makes a team. No one recruit makes a team. I say that all the time. But LSU has not optimized their team. They, like I said, keep playing Chasen Hines at right guard. And I don't mean to pick on Chasen Hines, but the Texas A&M game was not great. The Alabama game was a continuation of that. LSU continues to not mix things up on offense. LSU continues to ask Arik Gilbert to essentially play the fullback role in the offense. And I know Torrey Carter's not been here in recent weeks, but the truth remains the same. He wasn't brought here to be a lead blocker. So I can understand why he doesn't want to be here. So let's go take a look at Arik Gilbert's stats. And before the season, I actually did a deep dive on true freshman tight end statistics. And even though Arik Gilbert has not been utilized the way that LSU needs to utilize him, he already has 35 catches for 2 touchdowns, and he's averaging 10.5 yards per catch, which is pretty ridiculous considering where he normally lines up in this offense. So why is that important? Well, since 2009, there has only been one other tight end in the SEC that has caught 30 or more passes in a year that's a true freshman. Now let me repeat that. Only once has a true freshman tight end caught 30-plus passes, and that was Jalen Werdermeyer of Texas A&M last year. Not O.J. Howard, not Hunter Henry, not Irv Smith, not D'Angelo Peterson, not Richard Dixon, Arik freaking Gilbert. So he's already broken what is perceived of what a tight end could potentially do this quickly. So if I were Ed Orgeron, I would go to him and say, look, we're going to use you better. We're going to use you the way that we should use you. But it is what it is. Now, let's actually talk about Ed Orgeron just for a second, all right? And I want to go to a tweet from Are You Serious Sports. And shout out to Blake. I've been on their show. I was on their show a few weeks ago. He makes a good point. It gets even worse if an LSU player decides to opt out besides Gilbert. What if that happens? I'm going to lose it. It's getting bad. And so, yeah, you let me know what you think in the comment section. What's happening? Is Ed Orgeron becoming Gene Chizik before our eyes? It could be the Bo Pelini hire that is done in this team. And here's the thing. I know LSU lost so much talent. And like I mentioned in the film study, the number one indicator of how good your team is going to be the next year is how many returning starters and how many players you lose to the NFL draft. And obviously LSU set records in that aspect. So that excuse is always going to be there. But a few things. Number one, LSU started with the easiest schedule in the SEC. You couldn't have asked for a better first 3-week start. Then you were able to avoid a Florida beatdown in week 4. And then you had extra time to prepare for the Arkansas game. And so on and so on. You've caught all these breaks, and you still can't get it together. You go into Tuscaloosa and rightfully act up as a head coach. And like I don't mind Ed Orgeron saying what he did after the game, but you've got to back it up. If you're the one talking trash, the way Ed Orgeron talked trash after the Alabama game, you got to be the one that lifts us up, and he didn't. So, truth be told, 80 to 90% of this is on Ed Orgeron. Culture is an issue. I don't know if the locker room is gone because I'm not in the locker room. But the bottom line is there is a real disconnect on this team. Now, obviously, we're going to have a live stream Tuesday night, 7 Central, where you guys will be able to sound off. But go ahead, get in the comment section. In the description below is a link to our film studies for Texas A&M. But obviously, our recent one against Alabama, it's blowing up. Hit me up on Twitter, anywhere, but obviously in the comment section is the best place to go. It's our LSU. Boom! Ba-da-ba. I might switch to whiskey tonight. I might.